The 28th of July, 1940. The war has turned in Germany's favor. France has fallen, Britain is isolated, and Adolf Hitler fears as a master of the continent. In the ancient Austrian city of Zaltzburg, the Führer summons leaders from Slovakia, a small ally created in the shadow of the Reich. The meeting is short, sharp, and full of menace. Hitler demands that moderates be removed from the Slovak government and replaced by men more loyal to Berlin. He threatens that if Slovakia refuses, Germany's protection will be withdrawn and the country left to the mercy of Hungary, its ambitious neighbor. Faced with this ultimatum, the Slovaks give way. In the changes that follow, one man rises higher. A lawyer, professor, and politician, long known for his radicalism, he becomes both Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. Within 2 years, he will push his country into deeper alliance with Nazi Germany and into the mass deportations of Slovak Jews to extermination camps. His name is Vojtech Tuka. Vojtech Lazar Tuka was born on the 4th of July, 1880 in Piark, today's Štiavnické Bane, in central Slovakia, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was the son of Anton Tuka, a school teacher, and his wife Helena. From early life, he benefited from the support of powerful patrons. Ferdinand Coburg, then the ruling prince and later Tsar of Bulgaria, owned large estates near Piark and noticed the gifted boy. Coburg made him a protege, paid for his studies, and even employed him as a tutor to his son, the future Tsar Boris III. Thanks to this patronage, Tuka studied law in Budapest and later in Paris and Berlin. By 1901, he had earned a doctorate and soon became the professor of law. He taught in Pressburg, today's Bratislava, in Slovakia, where he worked at the Elizabethan University. At that time, German and Hungarian were the primary languages spoken in Pressburg, which had a significant impact on Tuka's language skills. The future Slovak nationalist politician never mastered Slovak properly until the end of his life. The end of the First World War brought changes. The Habsburg Empire collapsed, and on the 28th of October 1918, Czechoslovakia was created. After the war and the creation of the new state, Tuka joined the Slovak People's Party, founded and led by Catholic priest Andrej Hlinka, later renamed in his honor the Hlinka Slovak People's Party. It was a clerical nationalist party that demanded autonomy for Slovakia and opposed the idea of Czechoslovacism, which presented Czechs and Slovaks as one political nation. Tuka quickly rose among the radicals of the party, and in 1923 created the paramilitary Rodobrana, or Nation's Defense. This paramilitary group became a forerunner of the Hlinka's Guard, notorious later for its role in the persecution and deportation of Jews and political enemies of the Hlinka's party during the Second World War. Between 1925 and 1929, Tuka also represented the party in the Czechoslovakian National Assembly in Prague. On the 1st of January 1928, Tuka published an article in which he claimed that Slovak union with the Czechs in one state was meant to last only 10 years. According to him, after October 1928, Prague's authority over Slovakia was illegal. Tuka thus called for the exercise of the right to self-determination and the declaration of Slovak independence. The aim of the article from January 1928 was to activate radical autonomists and cause ethnic tensions in the young republic, which only a few years earlier had fought Hungary over Slovak territory. It was Tuka's contacts in Hungary and his activities prior to 1918 that raised fears of possible betrayal of the Republic. In May 1928, a criminal complaint against Tuka was filed, and later he was stripped of his parliamentary immunity. On the 3rd of January 1929, he was arrested and later convicted for treason and espionage for Hungary. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. His trial caused uproar in the ranks of the Slovak nationalist. To supporters, he became a martyr of Slovak autonomy. To opponents, he was a traitor and spy. Time proved his opponents right. During the time when Tuka was in prison, Europe was changing. In 1933, Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, and the Nazis began demanding territorial revision in Central and Eastern Europe, including the borderlands of Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland. When Hitler annexed Austria in March 1938, and Britain and France failed to act, he turned next against Czechoslovakia. At the Munich conference in September 1938, Britain, France, Germany and Italy forced Czechoslovakia to cede the Sudetenland to Nazi Germany. The Czechoslovak government resigned, and just a few weeks after the Munich conference, President Edvard Beneš went into exile while Slovakia was granted broad autonomy within post-Munich Czechoslovakia. By then, Tuka was already free. Released from prison to house arrest in 1937, he re-entered politics as a champion of radical pro-German positions within Hlinka's party. Hlinka himself died in August 1938, leaving the priest Josef Tiso as a new leader of the party. Tuka stepped into the space left by Hlinka, calling ever more loudly for independence and cooperation with Nazi Germany. In March 1939, Czechoslovak central government decided to suppress radical separatists in Slovakia. Czechoslovak troops moved from the center of Slovakia, Banská Bystrica, and arrested hundreds of radicals. Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany exploited the crisis, also with Tuka's help. On the 12th of February 1939, without any official authority, Tuka traveled to meet Hitler and declared that he placed the fate of the Slovak nation in German hands. 2 days later, on the 14th of March 1939, the Slovak Assembly illegitimately declared independence. The next day, German forces occupied the Czech lands of Bohemia and Moravia, and Slovakia became a puppet state under German protection. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. 1 month later, Josef Tiso became president, and he named Tuka as prime minister of the new puppet state. From the start, Tuka pressed for closer ties with Germany, and the Slovak state passed various anti-Jewish laws, with goals to seize Jewish property and exclude them from the economy. Propaganda portrayed Jews as exploiters of Slovaks and historical enemies. In July 1940, at the Zaltzburg conference, Hitler forced the dismissal of the so-called moderates in the Slovak government. Tuka, after German pressure, gained the foreign ministry while another radical, Alexander Mach, became Minister of Interior. In November 1940, Tuka signed Slovakia into the Axis alliance with Germany, Italy and Japan. Slovakia joined the invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941 and declared war on the United States in December 1941. Tuka also gave speeches praising Germany as the defender of Europe against Bolshevism. From his position as Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, Tuka long advocated brutal measures against the Jewish community in Slovakia. He composed the Jewish Code, which the Tiso government passed on the 9th of September 1941, and propaganda boasted that it was the strictest set of anti-Jewish laws in Europe. However, the worst was yet to come. Between March and October 1942, more than 57,000 Jews were rounded up in various camps in Slovakia and deported to the extermination camps in Auschwitz, Majdanek, and Sobibor. Almost all were killed, only a few hundred survived. The paramilitary units of Hlinka's Guard carried out the roundups brutally, with beatings and plunder. The Slovak State even paid the Germans 500 Reichsmarks per deportee for what was called retraining and accommodation. In reality, it was payment for murder of its own citizens. Tuka also enriched himself by robbing the Jewish population, and years after the end of World War II, his bank account was found in Switzerland. By 1943, Tuka's health was deteriorating. He suffered strokes that left him partially paralyzed, but German leaders, especially Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop, insisted he remain in office. In August 1944, the Slovak national uprising broke out as a reaction to German invasion, which attempted to pacify Slovak territory, where acts of resistance against Nazi Germany and the collaborationist Slovak State were on the rise. German troops tried to crush it, and at the same time resumed deportations of the remnants of the Jewish population who had managed to escape the first wave of deportations organized by Slovak politicians in 1942. About 12,600 Jews were deported, and most of them were murdered in the Auschwitz extermination camp. Several thousand more were shot in Slovakia, often with the participation of the Hlinka's Guard and other Slovak collaborators. The uprising was suppressed by the end of October 1944, and in Banska Bystrica, Josef Tiso decorated German soldiers who had crushed the uprising. When Germans were celebrating their victory over the insurgents, Tuka was not in the office. In September 1944, days after the uprising began, Tuka finally resigned due to poor health. When German defeat was inevitable in the spring of 1945, he fled on wheelchair with his wife and personal doctor to Austria. Captured by Allied troops, he was handed over to Czechoslovakia and put into prison. There he was, frail, confined to a wheelchair, and often unresponsive. Nevertheless, he was put on trial for his crimes. In July 1946, the Slovak National Tribunal opened proceedings against him in Bratislava. He faced charges of treason, support for Germany's war aims, declaring war on the Allies, and crimes against humanity for his role in deportations. Tuka denied personal guilt, claiming he had acted under pressure of events and always for Slovakia's good. As many other collaborators, he argued that after the Munich conference, survival required alliance with Germany. He tried to shift responsibility to Tiso and other Slovak politicians. However, witnesses and documents told another story. The story of a man who had courted Hitler, drafted racial laws, and orchestrated deportations. Vojtech Tuka's career shows how nationalism and ambition, when bound to extremism, can lead to destruction. He rose from small-town beginnings, enjoyed privilege through powerful patrons, and became a professor and politician. He dreamed of Slovak independence, but delivered his nation into Nazi servitude. Tuka pushed for anti-Jewish laws harsher than anywhere in Europe, even paid Nazi Germany to deport Slovak citizens to their deaths, and helped silence opposition. Though he asked the tribunal for a more lenient sentence, taking into account the fact that he was an unfortunate, harmless and broken old man, on the 14th of August 1946, Tuka was sentenced to death by hanging. 6 days later, on the 20th of August 1946, he was executed. Too weak to stand, he was carried to the execution site in a wheelchair, from which he was carried under the gallows and hanged. The execution, which started at 5:38 a.m., was clumsy and slow, lasting 10 long minutes before he died. When he suffocated on the gallows, he was 66 years old.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.